All right, hey VC, I'm Jamie. Welcome back. We're back with another video. I'm back with more vinyl finds, and I know I keep saying I want to keep my vinyl finds videos a little bit shorter, but unfortunately, I wait too long in between each vinyl finds video. So I got another big stack of wax to show you, so let's get right to it. Okay, we've got from 1970, this is Canned Heat and Future Blues, and love Canned Heat, the great blues rock band, of course, featured in the movie Woodstock, and or at least in the director's edition of Woodstock, and of course on the soundtrack as well. But yeah, Canned Heat and Future Blues, and this is the last album to feature the classic lineup of Canned Heat. Of course, they would have a number of albums after that one. Pick this one up. This is gosh, I had the CD DVD copy of this, but this is the incredible Muddy Waters Rolling Stones Checkerboard Lounge Live Chicago 1981. So this is on red and white vinyl. As mentioned, had this on CD and DVD, and so this is the double album, and it's pretty much as the hype sticker says, features Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Ron Wood, Ian Stewart, all jamming and on stage with Muddy Waters along with Buddy Guy, Junior Well, and Lefty Diz. I mean, just absolutely incredible. So there's the songs listings there, and I'll just take the shrink off here so we can take a look at the vinyl. All right. Some of the packaging's a little, I don't know, slightly odd, but okay. So there we've got that, and on disc 2, got some great pictures there, and sounds great. I mean, just a historic performance. What can you say? Okay, this is an album that has eluded me for quite some time. I think it's in just about everybody's collection, and now finally in mine. Classic Cream and Wheels of Fire, and this is the double album. This is like at least an early press or OG studio album, live album. Eric Clapton, Ginger Baker, Jack Bruce, incredible. And, the studio album that features White Room, Sitting on Top of the World, and Pressed Rat and Warthog, to name just a few. And then the live album that features Born Under a Bad Sign, Crossroads, Spoonful, Toad. But for whatever reason, I don't know. This album would come up, and then somebody would snatch it up, or I just would never seem to come across it, or it would come across only. Album has also been released separately, so I'd come across one of the albums, but not the other. But finally picked it up, so that's a good thing. Okay, this is a thrift store find. This is the very best of Johnny Rivers, and it kind of looks like a K-Tel album, but this actually is on the Liberty label. Of course, he had all the Live at the Whiskey A Go-Go stuff, so he does a lot of covers, including Memphis, Maybelline, Midnight Special, Seventh Son, and of course we also have Rockin' Pneumonia and the Boogie Woogie Flu, and Secret Agent Man, Rockin' Johnny Rivers. Okay, picked up Shocking Blue, the great band from the Netherlands, and this is the album that does contain Venus. I think the Dutch version of this album doesn't have that song, which was released as a single, but it is included on this North American release. Okay, great artist, Graham Parker, Look Back in Anger. I like Graham Parker's stuff, and this is classic performances by Graham Parker. So kind of a compilation on Arista. Okay, another one for the Straubs collection. I think I'm pretty close to having everything from the Straubs. It's a band I seem to be fortunate enough to come across in the wild on A&M Records, and this is early Straubs, so this does feature Rick Wakeman, who was briefly with the band before moving on to Yes. Canadian band, worth checking out if you like R&B, kind of rock and blues. If you like Fabulous Thunderbirds, you'll enjoy the King Bees. They had it with the song My Mistake, and this is their album from 1981 on RSO Records. Okay. I had a record show recently in Stratford that was kind of part of a local music festival, and picked up this from one of the sellers. Never thought I would come across an original copy or an OG of Blue Cheer. Of course, we know this hard rockin' album that features the cover of Summertime Blues, but certainly a nice shape, plays well, and wow. Fantastic, Blue Cheer. Okay, a little something from the '80s. How about Eddie Money? And this is the album "Can't Hold Back." And you know, it's kind of enough of the '80s gloss on it, but this is a good album. And of course, for the song "Take Me Home Tonight Alone," that features Ronnie Spector, which is so great. He does a cover of the song "One Chance," which is done by a Canadian artist, Stan Meisner, and that song hadn't been out too long before Eddie Money did a cover of it. So yeah, worth checking out. Okay, another Foreigner record. How about Foreigner? And this is the album Inside Information. And of course, the Foreigner hits just keep on coming. With this one, Say You Will, and I Don't Want to Live Without You on this one. And from 1987. Okay, I've talked about the album, or sorry, not the album, but the label Brain Records from Germany that features amazing German rock, psych, prog. I have a CD box set, The Brain Record Story, or The Brain Story. One of the bands that I'm really into is Jane. So this is Age of Madness from Jane. And then Jane Sign Number 9. And another band that's featured on that box set is Grobschnitt, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I picked these number of albums up from a record seller pretty close to me who's got quite a decent selection of some of this stuff. So this is the album Solar Music Live. Amazingly, very well recorded, and yeah, pretty amazing. Okay, from the UK, there's the Immediate record label. Now, this was Andrew Luke Oldham, manager of the Rolling Stones, who created his own label, Immediate, and so had a number of different bands on this one. So this is actually a Canadian-only release. So this is like a compilation that features Humble Pie, Fleetwood Mac, Small Faces, Chris Farlow, P.P. Arnold, The Nice, Amen Corner, and Twice as Much. But this is a specific Canadian-only release, and it kind of sums it up at the back here. Immediate folded in 1969 amid a confusion of legalities, and now thanks to Love Productions, or the label here. This historic catalog of recordings has become available again in Canada only, and much of it for the first time. So this one came out, I think it was roughly the early 70s, earlier mid-70s for this release. And they released a number of albums from Immediate. There's a Humble Pie album they released with this kind of silvery look to it. But yeah, this is a Canadian-only release, but pretty terrific compilation. And it's interesting to have Small Faces and Humble Pie on the same compilation. Of course, Small Faces with Steve Marriott, who would go on to a Humble Pie. But you've got a couple of Stones covers, Twice as Much doing Sitting on a Fence, and you've got Chris Farlow doing Out of Time. And on that one, Mick Jagger sings background vocals. And speaking of this label, there's also the Immediate Story, Volume 1, this featuring The Nice, of course, with Keith Emerson. We go on with Emerson, Lake, and Palmer. Now, it's a little misleading in terms of the labeling. It's not Volume 1 of The Nice. It's Volume 1 of the Immediate Records story. So Volume 2, I think, features the Small Faces, and then I think there's a Volume 3 that kind of focuses on blues. So this is a, yeah, double album spotlighting The Nice on the Immediate label. So yeah, I was happy to come across that one. Okay, we got some American Southern rock, Wet Willie, recorded in the UK. So this is the album Mannerisms, and this was recorded at the Manor and Chipping Norton Studios, Oxfordshire, England, and that's where they recorded. That's that's a pretty cool recording studio, I would think. But Mannerisms. So again, it's American Southern rock, recorded in the UK. And speaking of the UK, we've got hard rock and Tucky Buzzard, and the album All Right on the Night. And this album produced by Bill Wyman of the Stones. Okay, I picked this up at a local record store, Diamond Dogs. This was a Record Store Day album that I didn't pick up when initially released, but he had it on sale, and Jimmy Cliff and the album Follow My Mind. And love Jimmy Cliff, the reggae sounds of Jimmy Cliff, but nowhere on the jacket does it say it's colored vinyl. And it is. And they released this one. I think this was initially released on Reprise Records. I could be wrong, but this is on the, it looks like Law Records. Yeah, so don't know much about that, but it was a Record Store Day release, as you can see there. Okay. How about some UK folk rock? A band I certainly enjoy. Pretty easy to come across in the wild is Barkley James Harvest. This is Time Honored Ghosts. I do like that cover. And then we have Everyone is Everybody Else. Great title there. Okay, now here's an album I do have in my collection now twice, or at least a couple of times. This, of course, Janis Joplin, and I've got them old Cosmic Blues again. I have the album that has the R. Crumb lettering here. This is the original look to the album. They added the lettering in later pressings. That's one of the few examples where I didn't mind the lettering later. Like sometimes when they release albums and they redesign it, it just doesn't work. But I kind of like that because the R. Crumb lettering goes back to Big Brother and the Holding Company. But there you go, without the title across there. But yeah, Janis Joplin, I got them old Cosmic Blues again, Mama. To get the title right. Of course, Sam Andrew from Big Brother still with the band at this point. And certainly as Janis Joplin, it's, you know, every album's pretty much a different backing band. But yeah, classic stuff. Okay, how about some early Ted Nugent? This is Ted Nugent and the Amboy Dukes' Call of the Wild. I think this is one of the, maybe the last or second last Amboy Dukes album before pretty much Ted Nugent was doing the solo thing. And there's Ted there. Picked this up at a local thrift store. This is Elvis Presley and the Great Performances, which I've had on CD and really thrilled to find it on vinyl. It's a great song listing there, and sort of an interesting cover. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the look of the crowd initially, of course, it's that whole 50s look with Elvis. But I think the crowd for when this was released, I want to say maybe late 80s or even early 90s on this one. I think the crowd is supposed to look like a crowd from today. Now, I could be wrong. I don't know if maybe I should take it off the wrapper there, but it doesn't look like a crowd necessarily from the 1950s. It looks kind of more like it's initially, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Okay, Canadian artist. This is Lawrence Gowan, and this is the album Lost Brotherhood. I think this is like his third or fourth solo album. Great Canadian artist who's now a lead singer with Styx. A couple of hits off this one: All the Lovers in the World, along with Out of a Deeper Hunger, Lost Brotherhood. Lawrence Gowan is accompanied by Alex Lifeson on guitar on this album, also Kenny Greer with Red Rider, and Tony Levin on bass. Like, how amazing is that? And this was kind of getting now a little bit more into the CD era, so I was surprised that this one was available on vinyl. Okay. I didn't think I'd be able to find this on vinyl because this one seems to be getting harder and harder to find. I do have this on CD, a terrific double album. This is Blue Rodeo live at Massey Hall, of course, featuring all the great Blue Rodeo hits. Blue Rodeo, great Canadian rock or Canadian alt country rock, whatever you want to call them, featuring Jim Cuddy and Greg Keeler, and of course recorded at Massey Hall in Toronto, the famed concert hall in Toronto that has just recently gone under a lot of renovations, but now of course having concerts there once again. But just a terrific double album, and I absolutely love the cover. Of course, unfortunately I've still got the shrink on it, so there's a bit of a glare there. This is on double heavyweight vinyl, but just a terrific picture of the hall with the band, and so nice to have this as an LP size. Really nice, and just a terrific band, absolutely terrific band that I've seen several times over their career. Okay, we got some prog / psych stuff going on. Here's one I came across that was recommended to me from one of the record sellers there. This is on Elektra Records, a band I don't know too much about. Collection. I'm not even sure how to pronounce the name. It looks like election, but it's a collection. And again, as you can kind of see, it's kind of proggy, psych kind of stuff going on from the U.S. 1968. Described as kind of folk rock, but again on Elektra Records. So happy to pick that up. And then also recommended was Jade Warrior, kind of proggy rock. And unfortunately, this has got a little stamp here. It says the Warehouse. I'm assuming maybe the Record Warehouse or something to that effect. This is on the Vertigo label. And I'm beginning, boy, if it's on Vertigo, like I'm going to pick it up kind of thing. But super happy to have that. And finally got a Vertigo swirl there. Nice. Yeah, and it's interesting for some of these bands. There's just not a lot of information available, even in this internet age that we live in. Okay, moving around along. Andy Summers and Robert Fripp. I did not have this one. They made a couple of albums together. Of course, Andy Summers from The Police and Robert Fripp from King Crimson, and the album Bewitched. Again, pretty much predominantly instrumentals. They made a couple of albums together. I kind of wish they would have done maybe even a little bit more together, but there you go. This has certainly been recommended through the VC. I've shown lots of people talking about Julie Driscoll, Brian Auger, and the Trinity. Now, I've got some Brian Auger Oblivion records, but this is quite simply the best of Julie, Brian, and the Trinity. And they had the hit This Wheel's on Fire, the Bob Dylan song. And they also do Let the Sunshine In, which was from Hair. The kind of early folk rocky kind of stuff. But this is a Canadian press on Polydor. But yeah, happy to come across that because I often see Julie Driscoll and Brian Auger talked about in the VC that you got to seek out their albums. Again, more kind of fairly obscure stuff. This is the band Beast on, what is the label here? The Cotillion label. And again, this is kind of more, proggy, psyche kind of stuff. Check that out. So yeah, it's been coming across some interesting stuff. Okay, certainly lots of Renaissance albums available, and I've got a fair bit of Renaissance in my collection. Again, wonderful sort of folk rock from the UK. Okay, switching gears here. How about the Oscar Peterson Trio and excuse me, Night Train Volume 2, on Verve. Great Canadian jazz artist, Oscar Peterson. Okay, came across this one, and it was one of those, I was looking at it, just never thought I would come across this one. This is, and now live from Toronto, The Last Pogo. So The Last Pogo is a movie that spotlights a number of Toronto punk bands that were kind of doing their last kind of big show, their sort of last big hurrah. The Last Pogo, sort of a takeoff on The Last Waltz. Here are the bands that are featured. Now, this is not actually a soundtrack to the movie, but these bands do appear in the movie, and so this is kind of like extra stuff, if you will. So it's not specifically the soundtrack, but wow, I never thought I'd come across this. And now live from Toronto, just a great piece of Toronto history, and yeah, very, very cool. Okay. And I've never had a chance to actually watch the whole movie. I've seen a lot of clips or extended clips from the film, but I've never actually, unfortunately, seen the film. Okay, this is the sensational Alex Harvey Band. And next, I really enjoy Alex Harvey Band. Just some great stuff. Just rock and fun stuff. Okay, we've got the Ozark Mountain Daredevils and It's Alive. So this is a double live album, and I guess the Ozark Mountain Daredevils, I understand, are getting kind of popular again with the song, particularly Jackie Blue. Now, Jackie Blue is featured on this album. Again, I've enjoyed Ozark Mountain Daredevils. I do find they're kind of light in terms of maybe the whole Southern rock genre, if you will, but... and I do like live albums. I know some people don't care for live albums, but... All right. Excuse me, I got a little bit tickle in my throat. Of course, as I'm showing records, I got a tickle in my throat. The band Argent, love this band. This is actually an alternate cover, because I've seen this simply with one of the band members on the front, sort of a color, sort of almost in a silhouette, but alternate cover to this album. This is Argent and Nexus. Okay, and of course, with the passing of Jeff Beck, was able to come across a couple of Jeff Beck records. This is Jeff Beck and Flash. And then an album I have as part of sort of like a 2-4. It's like a double album that has one of the records, which is Truth. And then the other one being Beckola. But it's nice to have Truth as a single album. It's just like this is such a great record. So iconic. Oh my gosh, with Shapes of Things, Morning Dew. And of course with Rod Stewart, Jeff Beck, my gosh, Ronnie Wood, and Rod Stewart lead vocals. Incredible. Yeah, so some Jeff Beck going on there. All right. And we've got Third World. reggae stuff going on here. And it's a band that has put out a lot of material over the years. Of course, on the Island Records, Third World, great reggae band. Okay, just recently picked this up, and this is Roger Waters and the Lockdown Sessions, and so this is actually an EP. So yeah, it's pretty much as it says, these were songs that are all available on YouTube. Where they during the pandemic, during lockdown, they released some re-recordings with his band. So it includes 5 songs recorded during lockdown, plus a new version of the classic "Comfortably Numb." Now, "Comfortably Numb," his cover, I'm not too big on, but I really like his cover. Or is his solo rendition of Two Suns in the Sunset. That's the final track on Pink Floyd's The Final Cut. I think this is actually a better version because he's got his background singers going on, and it's a great, really nice version. The Gunner's Dream, they also does from The Final Cut. Bravery, Being Out of Range, that's a Roger Waters solo one, along with Mother and Vera. From The Wall. And then you, of course, also have Comfortably Numb 2022. So there, yeah, it is gatefold. So there's no colored vinyl or anything like that, but I'll show you the gatefold here. But yeah, so it's an EP, about 5 songs, and he does have a really good band with him. Yeah, they're the background singers. They do a really terrific job, especially like with Mother, and as I mentioned, with Two Suns in the Sunset. And I really do. Of course, as Roger, you got to have all the words. And I think it's a pretty straightforward label, just black vinyl, but nothing too exciting about the label there. But yeah, I was happy and pleasantly surprised that he was going to release this on vinyl. Now, whether he's going to release a version of Dark Side of the Moon, he's talked about it, but whether that's going to happen or not, I don't know. But there you go. Okay. How about White Duck and In Season? This was kind of a blind buy, didn't really know. It's kind of described as swamp music, or kind of like maybe Americana music, kind of like the music of the band, if you will. But you'll note one of the band members here is they're sort of sitting back, and you'd have to take maybe a closer look at the details featuring John Hyatt. So this was John Hyatt's band before his solo career, White Duck in Season. I don't know if you can see sort of the etchings there, like it's not too... There you go. White Duck in Season. Wasn't quite sure what to expect, especially, with a cover like that, what's it going to be? So there you go. Very nice. Okay. Shout out maybe to Glenn Calloway, who's a big fan of Dave Bromberg. This is the best of Dave Bromberg, and just an artist I've really gotten into in terms of the vinyl community, or on vinyl. He is so hard to categorize. It's bluegrass, it's rock, it's country, it's everything. He can really do it all, even on the span of this album. Starts off bluegrass, but then it's getting rocking, and it's just an absolutely varied and incredible artist. Really hard to categorize, but worth checking out for sure. Okay, we got Van Morrison, one I didn't have. There's so many Van Morrison records, and this is Beautiful Vision, and it's another lovely Van Morrison album. Okay, did not think I'd come across a copy of this. How about The Who and Magic Bus on Tour? And this, the cover in really nice condition on Decca. And of course, this is not a live album, even though it's called On Tour. But it's a really nice, almost kind of an early compilation, or songs that weren't on some of the other albums and things like that. But yeah, really enjoyed that one. Okay, a fabulous band. We were talking about Janis Joplin earlier. If you like Janis Joplin, you'll love this UK band, Stone the Crows. This is Teenage Licks, featuring Maggie Bell on vocals, and it's really got a blues rockin' kind of Janis Joplin vibe going on. Really great band, worth checking out, and quite the cover art on here. So we'll do this, and then we'll show you the inside here. My goodness. Okay, Stone the Crows. Picked this up. So happy I did. Picked this up on both vinyl and CD. If you're a Bob Dylan fan, pick this up. This is Bob Dylan and Shadow Kingdom. And speaking of kind of the lockdown sessions, so this is the soundtrack to the concert film. This was something that was available, which I didn't even know about during the pandemic. I believe it was available as a sort of like a pay-per-view thing. Now, there's some criticisms that people were thinking it was going to be a live pay-per-view thing that they were enjoying rather than something that was recorded for a pay-per-view, but it's just featuring, it's just a nice overview of his career in terms of a really sparse band. T-Bone Burnett's part of this. And although none of the musicians are credited on here, which is my only quibble about this, but check out the track listing here. I'll have to take this out of the shrink here and show you the vinyl here. Yeah. So this is soundtrack. It includes Forever Young, I'll Be Your Baby Tonight, It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. A friend of mine, John Gray, had seen the video clip for Forever Young and wondered where it was from, and it said check this out. And really enjoyed the arrangement. Again, it's sparse, different arrangements of the songs. But Bob is in fine form with this one. Here's the band. Again, there's no band credits, musician credits anywhere on here, either on here or on the CD, which is a little weird. But then it's got kind of the nice sleeves here on the sort of old school Columbia label. But it is 3 sides and then a etching on the 4th side. So I'll show you the etching here, because the etching is pretty cool as far as etchings go. So here is the etching. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. If it's kind of like the idea of the Columbia label here, but that is quite the etching here. So you can see the Columbia notes there. Pretty nice. And just a terrific album. If you're a Bob Dylan fan, pick that up. Okay, moving right along, we've got UK. We've got Demon Fuzz and Africa. And this is it's funky, it's proggy, this definitely has to be a reissue, because I picked this up at my local record store for a decent price. So yeah, it's got to be a reissue. But I've always seen this presented on the VC, didn't know too much about it, but really enjoyed it. Again, it's kind of funky, proggy. And speaking of which, when you see this for sale, you're going to pick it up. This is Funkadelic's greatest hits, and you're not going to say no to Funkadelic. All right. Now, here's an album I have seen and seen again over the years, and didn't really think too much of it. I thought it was kind of maybe one of another throwaway compilation, but this is the Guess Who, The Way We Were, kind of an unfortunate title, but unreleased recordings by the original group, of course, Bachman, Cummings, Cale, and Peterson. And so basically what this is, put together by Jack Richardson, their producer, this features the classic lineup, but this came out in mid-70s, I want to say 76. So this is pretty much when the Guess Who ended. Of course, they would reform years later and continue to do so, and pretty much the only original member currently is drummer Gary Peterson. They're still putting out albums and going out on tour, of course, without Bachman, Cummings, that sort of thing. But this features songs from that classic lineup that hadn't been released, so it is leftover tracks, but it does really work as an album. And initially, I hadn't really seen the track listing. I thought maybe it was just a sort of another kind of best of, and maybe a B-side or two, but it's a pretty decent record. If you're with Guess Who, especially with the classic lineup, definitely worth having as part of your collection. I was happy to finally pick that up, take the plunge. We got more Lou Reed, New Sensations. Now, I must get I love the song I Love You, Suzanne. In terms of Lou Reed's, his whole catalog, it's probably not tops on a lot of people's lists, but I just think that's a great rockin' song that deserved to be a bigger hit than it was. It did get some play on MTV. I remember when MTV came out, that song would come up. Just a fun video. But I just think that is a fun song, I Love You, Suzanne, which is a fun song is not synonymous with Lou Reed. But, there you go. Okay, just a few more. We've got from the East Coast some more great blues music. Dutch Mason and Give Me a Break. Great East Coast blues. And I find Dutch Mason albums are starting to get harder to find, and the pricing of these are starting to go up, which is interesting. And this on, of course, the great Canadian Attic Records. Just great blues stuff. Okay, we'll switch gears. This album I hadn't realized has actually been reissued, but this is Ravi Shankar, Shankar Family and Friends. And you can see George Harrison right there on the front, and of course George Harrison right there on the back. There's vocals, but predominantly instrumental. It's Ravi Shankar and Friends, that sort of thing. But yeah, this album has been reissued, of course, on Dark Horse Records. This is actually an original copy, and I don't think is it gatefold, but yeah, it's got some beautiful, beautiful insert here. That's let me just put this down here for a second. Featuring some of the words, or some of the, at least the nice lineup of the musicians here. Is quite a list of musicians taking part in this. But just a very nice insert there, and first time I've actually ever gotten something with an original Dark Horse inner sleeve. But Ravi Shankar and Friends. Okay, here's a band called The Glitter House and Colorblind. And this is kind of, I want to say, psych pop. Interestingly enough, this is arranged, directed, and produced by Bob Crew. So Bob Crew certainly worked with the Four Seasons and was responsible for a lot of their big hits. So it does have that kind of feel to it, you know, in terms of good vocals, good harmony, but it's still kind of, you know, a little bit more rock or sort of pop rock, or, you know, psych pop, if you will. But the Glitter House. Now, I think they had also some connection to the Barbarella soundtrack, if I'm not mistaken, because I think Bob Crew is involved with that soundtrack. Not a lot of information about this band, but nice. I believe at least it's his first edition, but at least I think it's an OG copy on Dynavoice. My goodness. Okay, quite the cover there. All right, and just a few more, as I mentioned. Finally, I've picked up a North American copy of Rubber Soul. This is in stereo on Capitol. This is not an OG. This is a later Capitol issue on the... now, it's got this Capitol label, or this Capitol inner sleeve, but I don't know if that's quite the right one for this one, because this is slightly... well, it's... Having said that, yeah, I mean, it's... With that label, yeah, this probably is at least an early copy for this, but the cover's in terrific condition. And again, you know, the North American version, very different from the UK version, but much more acoustic based. This one, a lot of North American fans, including myself, really like the North American version of Rubber Soul. But yeah, this has to be, yeah, come to think of it, I think this must be an earlier copier than I thought. Okay, there you go. I love that cover. All right, just about done here. Let's do Ladysmith's Black Mamazo. Starting to find a few of their records, and they're usually pretty inexpensive, again, from South Africa. Of course, they were featured on Paul Simon's Graceland, but they have released a number of albums over the years, and all just beautifully recorded. And what have we got here? Second last but not least, we got the American band Crowfoot. And this is nice, really kind of nice rock from the early 70s. And then last but not least, this was a thrift store find with a cover in immaculate condition, and it plays well. How about the Best of Hermits Hermits? I mean, the cover, this is a Canadian press, but the cover is in just terrific shape. Featuring all your Hermits Hermits hits. All right, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for dropping by. I do appreciate your time, as always, and we'll chat again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.